The Zephyrian Academy's xenobiology laboratory hummed with anticipation as Professor Kethvar prepared for the day's most challenging demonstration. The scaled instructor's mandibles clicked nervously as he surveyed his diverse class of interspecies students, his 4 amber eyes lingering on the 2 human exchange students seated in the back row. James Martinez adjusted his position in the specially modified chair, his broad shoulders dwarfing the seat designed for the more delicate Zephyrian physique. Beside him, Liza Chen meticulously organized her digital notes, her dark eyes focused on the containment unit being wheeled into the center of the laboratory. Today, Professor Kethvar announced, his translator converting his chittering voice into standard galactic, we will observe the Nexari shadow beast in its natural behavioral state. This apex predator from the Nexari homeworld represents one of the most formidable life forms in our known galaxy. The other students, a mixture of crystalline Altarians, gaseous nebulans contained in environmental suits, and several insectoid species, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The shadow beast's reputation preceded it across the galaxy. Liza leaned toward James, whispering, "The research I read last night mentioned these creatures can phase through most known materials and possess psychic intimidation abilities." James nodded, his calm demeanor unchanged. Growing up on Earth's Australian outback had taught him that every ecosystem had its apex predator, and respect was earned through understanding, not fear. The containment unit's force field flickered and died. Professor Kethvar stepped back as a writhing mass of midnight black tentacles emerged, each appendage gleaming with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like a hypnotic heartbeat. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, its central mass shifting between solid and semi-ethereal states. Immediately, the shadow beast's presence filled the room with an oppressive mental pressure. The Altarians' crystalline bodies began resonating with fear frequencies, creating discordant musical notes. The Nebulans' containment suits fogged as their gaseous forms contracted in terror. Even Professor Kethvar's scales rippled with involuntary color changes indicating extreme distress. The beast's multiple sensory organs rotated, scanning the room for the most suitable target to establish dominance. Its psychic emanations intensified, projecting primal fears directly into the minds of every sentient being present. But something unexpected happened. Instead of selecting one of the cowering alien students, the shadow beast's attention fixed on James. The human sat perfectly still, his breathing controlled and steady. Where others felt overwhelming dread, James recognized something familiar, the calculated assessment of a wild predator testing potential threats. The creature's tentacles writhed as it moved across the laboratory floor, its form partially phasing through desks and equipment. Other students scrambled away, but James remained seated, his eyes never leaving the approaching beast. "James," Liza whispered urgently, her hand reaching for his arm. "Maybe we should move." "No," James replied quietly, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had faced down dingoes, saltwater crocodiles, and inland taipans. Movement triggers chase response. Stay calm. The shadow beast loomed over the human student, its psychic pressure now focused entirely on James. But instead of the expected reaction of terror or submission, the creature encountered something it had never experienced before. A mind that acknowledged its power but refused to be dominated by it. James slowly stood, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. At his full height, he was nearly as tall as the beast itself. His steady gaze met what he assumed were the creature's primary visual organs. "Easy there, mate," James said softly, his Australian accent thick with the calm authority he'd learned from years of wildlife encounters. "Nobody here wants trouble." The shadow beast's bioluminescent patterns flickered with confusion. Its psychic emanations, designed to inspire paralyzing fear, seemed to slide off the human's consciousness like water off glass. In all its evolutionary history, the creature had never encountered a mind so naturally resistant to intimidation. Uncertainty crept into the predator's behavior. Its tentacles retracted slightly, and the oppressive mental pressure in the room began to diminish. For the first time since emerging from containment, the shadow beast experienced something entirely foreign to its nature. Hesitation. Then something remarkable occurred. As if recognizing a superior predator, the massive creature began to slowly back away from James. Its form shifted from the aggressive posture it had maintained since release to something resembling submission. Professor Kethvar watched in amazement as the galaxy's most feared predator positioned itself partially behind the human student, using James's presence as a shield against its own uncertainty. Liza documented everything with her scanner, her scientific mind racing to understand the unprecedented interaction. The creature's psychic emissions have decreased by 70%, she whispered to James. It's actually using you as a comfort presence. The other students slowly began to recover from their terror as the shadow beast's intimidation field weakened. They stared in disbelief at the sight of the legendary predator seeking protection from the calm human. James extended his hand slowly, palm down, in a gesture he'd learned worked with Earth's most dangerous animals. That's right, you're okay. Nobody's going to hurt you here. The shadow beast's tentacles twitched, and one carefully reached out to briefly touch James's outstretched hand before quickly withdrawing. The contact lasted only a moment, but the message was clear. Acknowledgement of a superior presence. Professor Kethvar found his voice first. In 3 centuries of xenobiology research, I have never witnessed such behavior from a Nexari shadow beast. Mr. Martinez, how did you? James turned to address the class, the massive predator still positioned protectively behind him. Every world has its apex predators, Professor. But the real apex predator isn't always the biggest or the strongest. Sometimes it's the one who understands that true dominance comes from not needing to prove it. As the demonstration concluded, and the shadow beast was safely returned to containment, following James's calm directions rather than the force field barriers, the human students became the subject of intense academic interest. Later, as they walked through the academy corridors, Liza shook her head in amazement. Do you realize what just happened? You've probably revolutionized interspecies predator psychology. James shrugged, his characteristic modesty intact. Just treated it like any other wild animal back home. Fear makes you prey. Respect makes you equal. Behind them, through the laboratory windows, the shadow beast remained calm in its containment unit, its bioluminescent patterns now pulsing, in the slower, more peaceful rhythm it had adopted in the presence of the human, who had shown it something entirely new, a predator who didn't need to dominate to command respect. The galaxy, it seemed, still had much to learn about humanity.